Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television talk show, Where Truth Matters. Thank you so much for watching. Every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. on the Eastern time zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. We are syndicated. You can find us on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. An announcement I've been waiting to tell you about for quite a few weeks, and it's finally happened. WZLA, which is a radio station right here, and they're the big one right here in Abbeville, South Carolina. They're classic country, and the show airs, and this one will be airing in just about 2 weeks on Saturdays at 9 a.m., and that's on the Eastern time zone, so we appreciate being affiliated with them as well. You can also find us on the Newscaster Studio. That's thenewscasters.com. All the social media sites. If it's social media, I'm doing it. I'm just telling you. I wanted to tell you about something really quick, Michael. This is Michael Maibach is with me right now. And Michael, I was stung by one of my honeybees this weekend, right at my face. And normally speaking, my face would be swollen and I would look like the Elephant Man. I mean, it's really bad. So I wanted to tell you about a medicinal plant, and you can buy it. You can buy the seeds, you get the plant, you can get everything about this plant. It's the comfrey plant. I made a salve out of it, and I used it. And you can see where my hair is just a little bit oily right there, but this is where it stung me, right here. And you know what? It stopped stinging. It stopped hurting. And also, I'm not swelling up like the Elephant Man. Now, I may later on, but right now I'm not. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Find this plant. We're all about the truth. Find the plant. Okay, it's medicinal, and it's all for you out there. Anybody can raise it. If I can, you can. Michael Maibach is with me right now. It's always so good to be with you. I've been looking forward to this segment. We're going to talk about, I'm talking real history. You know, things that are not being taught in school anymore. Right. And so it's such an honor to have you on the show, Michael.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you're going to be talking about George Washington, one of my favorite topics.
His farewell address. Mm-hmm. And the background is that, it, by the way, it wasn't an address. It was an op-ed essay in the Philadelphia Advertiser newspaper, which was the largest circulation of any newspaper in America. And he published it in September of 1796. When he decided not to run for re-election for a third term. FDR, pay attention. And but he published it in large measure as a warning to the citizens, because we had created a republic, the founders did, but republics always failed in history. And the founders were students of history, of course, and they knew that republics were very, very delicate flowers to grow because of human nature, which is people tend toward tyranny, to having the strong man on a horse. And he was worried that after his 8 years, and all he did to gain our independence, and all they did in Philadelphia in 1787 to write the Constitution, in which he was the chairman, Constitutional Convention, he was worried that this republic wouldn't last very long. And so this is really about, you know, it's almost like telling your children, your mother and I have worked all of our lives to build this business down. Don't mess it up, right? And so we're going to walk through what his address said and why those 7 warnings are still very important for us today in America. And you'll be amused that, my gosh, these warnings could have been written this morning. This was published as an op-ed essay in the Philadelphia Advertiser. And there are 7 warnings we're going to go over in this speech. He wrote it at his Mount Vernon estate. This was the lamp he used when he was writing at night, 2 candles and a reflector desk lamp. This is the picture of the actual op-ed that readers in Philadelphia read in their newspaper, the address of General Washington to the people of America. And it was then reprinted in almost every newspaper in the country, and it became more reprinted than the Declaration of Independence during that period. As we know, Washington was the commander-in-chief of the army during the war with England, crossing the Delaware, 1776, victories at Trenton and Princeton, Valley Forge, British surrender at Yorktown with the help of the French, of course. He resigns as commander-in-chief, and when he did that, George III, the King of England, said, "He's the greatest man in history." And what he meant by that was every conquering general in Europe, once they won a war against another king or another monarch, would take over the country and become the new king. And George Washington didn't want to be a king, and he went back to his farm. Madison asked him then to chair the Constitutional Convention 11 years later in 1787, because the Articles of Confederation were not working, and we can talk about that another time. He and Adams were elected the first president in 1789 for 2 terms. He takes the oath of office in New York City, but soon thereafter, Philadelphia became the capital city. It was the largest city in the country. And remember, when he's taken the oath of office, just 3 months later, we had the French Revolution. And that's very important, because the French Revolution, they thought they were doing what the Americans were, getting rid of the king. But of course, they got rid of the king by killing him. We didn't kill George III. They invented the guillotine. They had so many people to kill. They also killed the priests, and they got rid of everything they had inherited. And we didn't do that. We kept all the good things from the British, including our faith, our Christian faith, and our common law, and our idea of rule of law. The French Revolution was a failure in the name of democracy. Ours was a success in the name of a republic. So, ironically, the first political party system started inside the cabinet of Washington, because Hamilton and Jefferson, Hamilton, the Secretary of Treasury, Jefferson, the Secretary of State, had very different views about foreign policy, as well as other things. Hamilton was for a national bank. Jefferson was against it. Hamilton was for neutrality with the Europeans. Jefferson wanted us to ally with the French. He had been ambassador to France. He spoke French, and really did not like the British in a way that Hamilton thought otherwise. Hamilton helped draft the farewell address, and the main message was Washington will not seek re-election for a 3rd term, but he offers American advice as well. He wanted the nation he helped to create to lead to be sustainable. And he was very worried, just like we are we are today, and we have been all throughout our history. The great thing about Americans, we're always worried about our country. That's good. Stay worried, because self-government and Republican government is really hard to sustain. As we know, he chaired the Constitutional Convention. When he wrote this, the Constitution was only 8 years old. And he thought, my gosh, will it last another 6 or 8 years? Remember that the world in those days was full of slavery, war, tyranny, and poverty everywhere. And of course, America was surrounded by European armies and governments, the Spanish to the south, the French to the west, where later was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 by Jefferson. And the British, of course, when they lost the war with us, they went up to Canada. So we were surrounded in the late 1700s by the Europeans. So his advice is to remain united geographically and under our Constitution, remain independent. Wars abroad are high risk. Do not become a debtor nation. Don't do what the French are doing to themselves. The French, of course, went from a king to a parliament to Napoleon, all from 1789 to 1815, when Monroe was president. And so we have to remember that democracies fell apart in history. And of course, they invented the reign of terror for themselves, which was just terrible. So he says, a solicitude for your welfare and permanency of your felicity as a people, and the apprehension of danger urged me to offer you for frequent review the warnings of a parting friend. The farewell address of Washington is read every year on the floor of the U.S. Senate on the anniversary of Washington's birth. He talks about liberty, the unity of government. Interwoven is a love of liberty with every ligament of your heart. The unity of government, in other words, the Constitution constitutes in one people a main pillar of your real independence. The name American should really be important to you. Remember, most Americans in those days never left their states. If you lived in Georgia, you spent your whole life in Georgia, so you might call yourself a Georgian or a New Yorker, but he wanted people to say, I'm an American because we're one country, and that should be very important to you. Much pains will be taken to divide us from internally and externally. And of course, we find this today in America. We have to stay united because national unity is the palladium of our liberty. Now, he talks about in the North, we have unrestrained intercourse with the South. And because he was probably worried in those days about the North. The North was industrializing, early days of industrialization. The South, of course, had mostly agriculture. And then the East has intercourse with the West. The East sends manufactured goods to the West. The West has markets for its raw materials and that sort of thing. So he's worried about us dividing, what later became the Civil War. He also talks about the Jay Treaty. John Jay, the Supreme Court Justice, went to England and signed a treaty on behalf of the United States. The British got rid of their forts in the Northwest Territory and retreated to Canada, and U.S. ship owners were compensated for the losses when British ships would board them when they were at war with the French. And we also had most favored nation trading status with the British for the first time. They weren't tariffing our goods anymore. He also had signed the Pinckney's Treaty, which settled West Florida. There was a boundary dispute between the state of Georgia and the Spanish in Florida, and Georgia and then parts of Alabama became part of the United States, the future Alabama, when the Panhandle was renegotiated with this treaty. As I said, he chaired the Constitutional Convention. He said we must sustain the Constitution. The government for the whole is indispensable. No alliances among the 13 states, however strict, between the parts can be adequate substitute. We're not going to be a confederation. We did that and it did not work. We had no national army. We had no court system nationally, and all the rest that we got in the Constitution. He worried about the spirit of the parties, political parties. He didn't want the spirit of party to divide the country so much that we would be riven, if you will, by the acrimony, sort of like family disputes. We have political parties, and it started in his cabinet, but he worried about it if it was party over country. And so he talks a lot about that. He says that parties can sometimes find men who will become the absolute power of the individual. In other words, the man on the white horse who would then try to lead the country and get rid of our constitutional separation of powers and all the rest that we have in the Constitution, what we call a Republican government. And he says that we are a compound republic. This is Madison and Federalist 51 as well, because every state, to become a state, has to have the three branches of government, the checks and balances. People take this for granted, but whether you're in North Carolina or in Georgia or in Montana, you have a governor, a legislature, and courts, and you cannot join the United States of America. All 50 states have to have the checks and balances, because this is what keeps us free. He talks about religion, morality, and civics, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity. Religion and morality are indispensable. They're the great pillars of human happiness. And he says, and let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. And another way of saying this is the Ten Commandments tells us what's right and wrong, and this comes from our religious history, and we cannot assume that our own personal morality will be enough. We have to have the objective truths of faith. And yet we have decline of religion in America in the last 20 or 30 years, and we have to hope that will level off and maybe improve. Perhaps with the tragic death of Charlie Kirk, for example, religiosity among young people will improve, because there is a golden triangle of liberty. He says, cherish public credit. We have to make sure that we don't become a debtor nation. And he also talks about we ought to be arming ourselves. He says that timely disbursement to prepare for danger frequently prevents much greater disbursements to repel it. So peace through strength. So we have to spend enough on military to be a strong country internationally, and yet don't go into debt with many other things. Of course, what's going on now in America is the cost of health care by the federal government, and printing the money is our problem. It's not national defense. And you see that our national debt is going up and up and up. And this is really with Medicare and Medicaid and the aging population, people not having many children as they used to, that sort of thing. But he doesn't talk about that, because in those days they did not have health care in our government. And he talks about cultivating peace. He says, I bear good faith and justice towards all nations, cultivate peace and harmony. Can it be that providence has not connected the felicity of our nation with its virtue? In other words, if we're a virtuous nation, we should have good relations with everyone if we can. And remember, we're surrounded by the Spanish, the French, and the English when he's writing this. And of course, the Russians, he didn't know this at the time, but they were in Alaska. So we had another European power. And what he says is European history is all about frequent wars. Europe has a set of primary interests. Hence, she is engaged in frequent wars. Our distant situation across the Atlantic enables us to pursue neutrality. And of course, he knew something about war. He was an officer in the French and Indian War, where he had lots of bullet holes in his coat when he's leading the retreat after the death of General in the French and Indian War, General Braddock. And so, as I have mentioned again, surrounded by the Europeans, but today we're surrounded by other enemies, so we can recognize here. The nation which indulges toward another habitual hatred or fondness is in some degree a slave to its animosity or to its infection. So America first, he might say. In other words, we're not going to put aside the national interest for another nation's interest. And the French Revolution had continued. The British were now fighting the French. And Jefferson wanted us to support the French in their war with the British. Hamilton was against that. They want to be us, and in other words, in their revolution, but they ain't us. This would be Hamilton. And so, as you can see, revolutionary France was starting to take over parts of Europe. And of course, this becomes, for 15 years, Napoleon controlling much of Europe until the Russian war with France ended Napoleon's dreams of that. Napoleon even took over part of Egypt at that part of history. The rights, this is Hamilton, the rights of neutrality will only be respected when they are defended by an adequate power, but he was for neutrality in this instance. And so in 1793, Washington declares, it appears a state of war exists between Austria, Prussia, Sardinia, Great Britain and Netherlands on the one part and France on the other, and we ought to be neutral. The duty and interest of the United States require that we should, with sincerity and good faith, adopt and pursue a conduct friendly and partial toward the belligerent powers. In other words, let's have neutrality.
I have some questions for you regarding his speech, but this is the one that really stuck out with me, and this was the religious aspect of everything.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question: religion or no religion? But before I say that, how do you feel? Okay, so when someone is, I know a lot of people who are not religious at all. Now they don't trust Jesus Christ as their Savior, none of that stuff. No, they're not Muslim, they're nothing. They're agnostic. Okay, these people don't seem to be dreamers at all. And what I mean by that, you can't run your life on a dream.
Yeah.
However, you can run your life on faith. How important do you feel it is to include religion in the government when it comes to, say, earning a living, folks being prosperous in the United States? Do you think that's a key point?
I do. When we testify before court, we put our hand on a Bible. When a president swears in, or a member of Congress, or a governor, or a legislator, they put their hand on their Bible. Mm-hmm. They do that because the idea of religion is truth. And it's not my truth versus your truth, which we hear from some young people these days. My truth, I'm a boy, but I want to be a girl, or whatever people come up with, is really sort of personal anarchy. We inherited from the British and from Europe, from the Old Testament and the New Testament. We inherited the idea that there are truths that we have to recognize, and it has to do with natural law. Natural law is that a watch is a watch. If you have a watch and it tells time, it's a good watch because it's true. It tells time. When your watch stops telling the right time, is always 20 minutes late, what do? You either get rid of it or take it to the watchmaker and he fixes it. The natural law of being a watch is to tell time. The natural law of a human being is to know what is right and wrong. All right. So a flower, opens up and petals every morning and beautifies the world. And that's the natural law of flowers. The natural law of human beings is to live up to their own nature and to truth. And whether you're religious or not, there has to be an objective truth that you recognize. Otherwise, it's just my truth versus your truth. I know you think I stole your car, but now it's my car. That you don't have a society without a morality. And we know a 7-year-old boy who takes a toy from his 4-year-old brother knows that it's wrong. So you don't have to be an adult to know right and wrong. So religion reminds us that there are objective truths, and there are people that are secular humanists that just think, well, I have a moral compass and I don't need religion. But everybody around you is sort of helping you with that. If we had no religion at all in our society, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
I think so too. And without the faith, because of the faith in religion that we have, you can also have faith in the rest of your life. As far as creating a dream business, those things, you have to have a beginning. You have to have a faith. There has to be something about that makes you want to go forward.
Right. Now think about weddings. I went to a wedding in Dallas 2 weeks ago, and we were in a church, and you have a priest there, and it was a Catholic church, and why do we have weddings very often? Not always, but very often in churches. Well, because that new couple is capable of producing a new human being. And what are human beings? They are moral decision makers, right? And in other words, my dog doesn't know right from wrong. She just knows me versus the neighbor's dog, right? That's what she knows. And she likes me, and she doesn't really like the neighbor's dog that well. But my dog doesn't make moral choices. but we do as people. And if we're going to create new people, we would ask the good Lord's blessing that we would know how to raise that person to be a moral person. And the breakdown of marriage, the breakdown of families, leads to more people in prison because if you're not taught as a young person how to treat others and how to be a moral person, well, going to church and being reminded every Sunday that we are sinners and that we have to improve our behavior is a way of life. We're all imperfect, which is why we have the checks and balances. I talked about that earlier. We're only free in America, not because of the Bill of Rights, but because of the checks and balances. But also, the spirit of party that Washington talked about. Now, the Democratic Party right now doesn't control the House or the Senate or the White House, and they're not happy at all about that. And if it was the reverse, the Republicans wouldn't be happy. So what are they doing? They're suing Mr. Trump about every 4 hours. I mean, there's just lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And so they're making everything go to the third branch of government. And sometimes the Supreme Court agrees with them, and sometimes the Supreme Court agrees with Mr. Trump. And in 2 years, well, now another year and 2 months, we're going to have an election for the House and Senate. And if the Democrats take over the House or Senate, then they will have a whole different sense of their ability to get their own way in American government. But of course, we'll still have Mr. Trump in the White House and he can veto things, and they'll probably impeach him again because they did that twice before. But my point is, there's always a hope in our republic that you can regain power within 2 years and in the meantime sue everybody. And ironically, as much as we don't like all the gridlock is what gives us hope for the next election so we can take over again. So it's an ingenious way to deal with difficult people, which is all of us.
Absolutely. Let's go into a commercial break. We'll return in just a few minutes. Everybody hang in there, okay?
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community. Whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need, toys at Christmas, or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
The only place I buy my beef is Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama. Their cattle is born and raised on their ranch, grass and grain fed, and you can feel confident when you serve your family and friends because their beef is all natural and no antibiotics or hormones are added. You can buy whole beef or perhaps go in with family or friends and buy half. Their customer service is number one as they take care of the delivery to their local processor and can deliver to your home for a small added fee. They also offer herd replacement heifers. I always call Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama for my beef specialty recipes and cookouts, and you can too. Food shortages are increasing, so buy local by calling 256-523-6462. That's 256-523-6462.
Okay, we are back. My name is Donna, and I am your host of Donna's Age Television Talk Show, where truth matters. We're on radio and television now. So radio, you can find us on WZLA. It's 92.9. They are a big powerhouse right here in South Carolina. So we appreciate the opportunity to be able to reach this audience as well. And you will find us on the station on Saturdays, and that's at 9 a.m., and that's on the Eastern time zone. You can also find us on syndication at Abundant Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on the newscasters.com, Facebook. If it's social media, we are doing it. And continue sending emails. Donna@donnasedge.com. That's Donna@donnasedge.com. Michael, it's always such a pleasure to have you on the show. Man, it was a quick 30 minutes. So I have a few questions for you. And this pertains to division. Okay. And so we know that a house divided will fail. I mean, you've got to keep everything together. So when Washington, so when they create the two-party system, there are pluses about that. Then there are also huge minuses if we didn't have a two-party system that wouldn't keep us under checks and balances, like you mentioned before. Are we ready for a third party?
So that's a good question, and it comes up all throughout our history. Matter of fact, Teddy Roosevelt had the Bull Moose party, which caused Woodrow Wilson, unfortunately, to be elected because the Taft and Roosevelt split the Republican vote. If we look at Europe, there's 27 countries in the European Union, and on average, they have 9 parties. The Israelis, with I think it's 120 million, 12 million people, they have 10 parties. Mm-hmm. So, quote, democracy or Republican government always tends to disaggregate or atomize the party system. You know, we don't like something, so we'll start a new party. Germany's going through this a lot these days. Alternative for Germany, for example, is a new party. It's just been around 15 years or so. And now the number one party in the polls in the UK is not the Conservatives or the Labour Party, but sort of a rebel party that's rising to power. And in the United States, we've had historically two parties. And the only reason we've had two parties is because of the Electoral College, something I've spoken with you about on. And the reason is because when you're a third party, you get nowhere in American politics. I'll give you a couple examples. In the turn of the last century, we had Eugene Debs, who ran for president 3 times. And in one of those campaigns for president, he got 19% of the vote. He was a socialist. This is part of the progressive era, just before Woodrow Wilson. And he won no presidential electors because he won no states. We had Ross Perot in 1992 run against Bill Clinton and George Herbert Walker Bush, who was president at the time. And Perot got 20% of the vote, and he got 0 states.
I was one of them. My dad, of course, Clinton. My mother was Bush, and I couldn't like either one of them. So I voted Perot.
Yeah. Well, he won 20% of the vote, but all he did was cause Bush to lose and Clinton to win, because those 20% mostly came from conservative Republicans who didn't like NAFTA. That was his big thing. The great sucking sound, he called, of all the jobs. And of course, Trump is reversing. He's trying to reverse all that. So Ross Perot, if he was alive today, would be a Trump supporter, I would think. So the point is that because you have to win, we've only had 2 presidents that were elected without the majority of the states. That was Clinton and Kennedy, 23 states each, because there were other people running. Well, in the case of Kennedy, it was Strom Thurmond, I'm pretty sure, was running for president. And some southern, I think 5 or 6 southern states, I guess it was, ran or voted for Strom Thurmond. And so, but my point is that you've got to win states, not just the big cities. And so we have a 2-party system. It's a big gift. We have Continental Republic. We have 300 and some million people. And to have just 2 parties makes it simple. Are you for this party or this party? If we had 9 or 12 parties or whatever it would be, we'd have a new Speaker of the House every month, at least. And the coalitions inside the Congress would be a mess. And talk about, you don't like gridlock now, just wait until we have gridlock with 12 parties or something. So we only have 2 parties because of the Electoral College system.
I know we speak of Washington as being a very, very wise person. Would you attribute that to just knowing human nature and how us humans are and the way we think and the way we do things? Is that why he insisted on the 2-party system?
Well, he didn't really want the 2-party system. I'm sure people disagree about this, but he was worried not about parties so much as harsh factions. And this is what Madison in Federalist 10 and 51 write about, which is the fear of factions. And that is, for example, I think a good sense of what a faction is after Israel was attacked, what was it, October 7th of 2023? I'm pretty sure that was the date, 6th or 7th. And we have these demonstrations on college campuses for Hamas. Do you remember how difficult that? This anger and it isn't just, we're for lower taxes, but rather vitriol. The Hamas demonstrations on campus where they would stop Jewish students from going to class. So these are mobs. This is mob rule. That's what he was worried about, was mob rule. And of course, the French Revolution was all about mob rule, right? And so people in the streets, remember when George Floyd died at the hands of a police officer, and we had cities that were burning in Minneapolis and Portland and Seattle. Those are angry mob factions. That's what they were worried about. I think political parties where you have the the Nixon Kennedy debate. I mean, I don't think those would bother Washington. Every candidate has debates. What he was worried about was people that were willing to really tend toward violence and to destroy the country they inherited. So I think what that is about.
But there's such a distinction, though, between our two parties we have now. Okay, so we talked about the George Floyd burning down cities, people were running to every liquor store, robbing it, tennis shoes, the whole works. But then again, Charlie Kirk is assassinated, and the folks on, I consider my team, we were praying for the guy who shot him. I mean, it's two total distinctions. A lot of people would say that the difference between the two parties now would be, evil and what are your thoughts about that?
So it's a very good point. So I think the definition of a conservative, small c, I'm not talking about Republican or political parties, I'm a conservative, is a couple of things. One is gratefulness. Everything we've inherited that is good, we're grateful for. Like the Constitution, like being in America and not Iraq or something like that. The second thing is that we have a healthy understanding of a broken nature of human beings and that all of us are broken and need forgiveness and redemption. This is a Judeo-Christian country. This is a Judeo-Christian Western civilization that we've inherited, right? Unfortunately, those on the far left, I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking about those on the far left that you are referring to, that burn down things when they're unhappy. They think there are some people that are broken, the people they don't like, and there's some people that aren't broken, but full of virtue themselves. This is what we call virtue signaling. And this is why we got into cancel culture, in the last 15 years. Those terms are going away, fortunately, but the critical Marxism, critical theory, they call it, which comes out of Herbert Marcuse, a professor in America. The critical theory says that there are people of color, women, minorities, different groups, and we have to put everybody into groups, and then we have to organize those groups against other groups, whites, men, whatever, people from Europe versus people from the third world or whatever, and it becomes social chaos and political anarchy and stuff. So it's a very important thing to understand is that the Judeo-Christian mind sees everyone as broken, and therefore you have to be tolerant to others because you need tolerance yourself. That's very different than this view that Charlie Kirk deserved to die because he didn't think boys could become girls, and therefore he's evil somehow. It's tragic. But they tend to violence in the name of purifying us all. It's very dangerous. It's a very small number of American people and immigrants that are here illegally, maybe, who knows. But the Judeo-Christian history that we have is at the foundation of our freedom. The checks and balances philosophically was developed by Aristotle in his Politics, his book, The Politics, when after reading his teacher write in Plato's Republic that democracies always become tyrannies. And when I talk about that in my speech on the Electoral College, I then show Isaiah 33:22. God is the king, the lawgiver, and the judge. The three branches of government are in the Old Testament. And the founders mostly got their ideas from Exodus, Genesis, Deuteronomy, Romans. That's where the founders got most of their ideas about self-government. And, I think it's Ephesians says, thou shalt not follow a majority to do evil. And this is the idea that majority tyranny is a problem.
It's so strange. And I've heard, my dad was a minister. My husband's dad was a minister. And I heard them talk about this all my years of growing up. And they would talk about how, there will be a day when good is not thought of as evil and evil is good. They talked about that a lot, throughout the whole ministry. And we are actually seeing that right now, where you have Charlie Kirk, who, and I've seen his videos. My son followed him and continuously sent to me videos for the past few years. And there's one in particular I'm thinking about, is where this guy, he's a guy. I mean, it's so obvious, but the stubble on his face, the whole works. But he has on this pink fairy dress looking something, and he thinks he's a girl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the way Charlie Kirk handled it, it was not a demeaning way. He didn't make fun of him. It was nothing like that. As a matter of fact, he didn't say anything. And when someone tried to interrupt, he said, "No, let him talk. Let him talk."
Uh-huh.
So he let him talk. And then when he finished, he said, "Are you through?" And then the guy said yes. And he said, "So how long have you thought you're a girl living inside a boy's body?" And it was a very young age. He said when he was somewhere around 9 years old, something like that. And he said, "Okay." He said, this is what and they asked if he'd had any of the surgeries done. And the guy said, "No, he's taking hormones. He's getting ready to be a woman." And he said, "You do realize you can't have a menstrual cycle. You do realize you can't have babies. You can't do that. You won't be able to do that." And he said, "But before you do this," he said, "seek counseling, preferably Christian counseling. But before you do this, before you have your body mutilated, would you promise me that you'll go and talk with someone about this?"
Yeah.
But it's the way he said it. It wasn't like, "I hate you. We're going to cancel your business. You'll not be able to buy and sell." It was nothing like that. But then when you look at the other side, it's like, you don't believe what they believe. Well, we're just going to close your business down. We'll take you off of Facebook. We'll, just all those things.
Yes, right. Very harsh. Yeah. Well, this is the revolutionary impact of Jesus of Nazareth. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. My kingdom is not of this world. It is metaphysical, and it's quite a gift to civilization to have these ideas. It's a way of living together. If you look around the world, other than one country, there is no country that's free that isn't Judeo-Christian. There's only one. Indonesia is a Muslim country, and they do have freedom, but it's highly unusual outside of. We as Christians want everybody to enjoy freedom and be in a republic. We call it a republican government, which is limited government with minority rights. But it's hard to do. And yet you look at a jury trial, it isn't 7 out of 12 jurors. It isn't 11 out of 12. It's 12 out of 12. That's quite a test. All 12 have to agree. And that's the whole idea of minority rights, is even if there's only one juror holding out, it's a hung jury. And so if it was just 7 out of 12, we'd have majority tyranny in juries, wouldn't we? So I like to say, when I talk about the Electoral College and somebody says, "Well, it's undemocratic," and I'll say, "Now, is there a young lady in this student body here who has 3 brothers? Because she knows something about majority tyranny." and the girls with brothers know something about majority tyranny. And so, we humans, we tend to be tyrannical. We want our own way. I mean, a 5-year-old fighting with his 6-year-old sister or whatever, he wants his own way. And so the whole idea of family. The other day I was with an audience of students, and I said, "How many levels of government?" And they said, "Federal, state, and local." I said, "You've left one out. It's federal, state, local, family. And the family is the first level of government. It's where the king and queen, your parents, tell you, the subjects, how to behave yourself, right? And matter of fact, how many times do parents over the life of their children say, don't. You just go to bed, do your homework, clean your room.
That's all you gotta do.
Right. And when the family breaks down, then we have more people in prison because they don't learn self-government. Self-government is something it takes, a dozen to 18 years to learn. And when you ask about Washington, he must have good parents, don't you think? He must have very good parents. I mean, there's monuments all over the place about Washington. They should have monuments for his parents, don't you think?
I think so. When you look at it that way, they were greater than him.
Look what they produced. So anyway, it's all good. It's all good.
Let me ask you one more question. So we have a few minutes left in this segment, about 5 minutes. And then I want you to talk, well, folks can get in contact with you, because I know that you speak and go to colleges and whatever. But let's pretend George Washington was president now. Okay. And when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, how do you think he would have handled that? What would have been his response? Or would we have had a Charlie Kirk assassination?
We would not have had that, I don't think. There were 59 people at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, 1 Catholic and 58 Protestants. We just didn't have, in those days the loss of religiosity among half of our people. We didn't have men wanting to be women or thinking they're women or something. This comes from Freud and all kinds of other ailments of philosophical life, perhaps. But we had other problems. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I mean, witch trials. They thought there were witches. So I don't know. I think that the Whiskey Rebellion. They didn't want to pay taxes, and Washington had to get personally involved to lay down the law on that. And so there's always, every age has problems. The other day I was giving a speech at the Alexandria, Virginia Rotary Club. I live in Alexandria, Virginia. And instead of starting with a prayer, usually they start with a prayer, a woman read what the life was like of a person born in 1900, which is when my grandparents were born. Mm-hmm. So she said, when this person was born, by the age 16, World War I began. By age 19, 70 million people died of the Spanish flu. And then when they were 29, they had the Great Depression and 25% unemployment in America. And then when they were 41, the World War I begins. And then when they're 65, the Vietnam War begins. And then, and by the way, Kennedy was assassinated when they were 63, and Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy when they were 69. And you get the idea. And they die. This person dies at 9/11, and when they were 101. And the point that this story makes is that life is difficult and always has been. And we think things are difficult now. Things are difficult all the time. I mean, people in 1859 were heading toward a civil war, and 750,000 people died in that civil war. So. Welcome to the world. We're here because life is difficult and we're supposed to make the best of it. And that's why people need each other. It's not Club Med. And our founders had their own problems. Washington had wooden and fish bones for teeth because he had lousy teeth and he lost most of them. So there was no dentistry. There was no anesthetic was invented by a dentist, actually. Decades and decades.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah, so no penicillin. Calvin Coolidge's son, Calvin Jr., when he was, I think, 13, was playing on the White House tennis court because it was a hot day and they only had wool socks, not cotton socks in those days. He wore his tennis shoes without socks. The shoes cut his ankle from the wear and tear of the game. Became infected, and 3 days later he died. The president of the Sun had no medical treatment to save him from a cut in his ankle. And 2 years after that, penicillin was invented in England. Mm-hmm. So life is difficult. When the president can't save his son from a cut from his shoe, we should be so grateful for all that we have. And we have this Constitution, we have penicillin and the Constitution. We got to be grateful for them. And we've got to understand that man is a broken creature, and that self-government requires all of us to treat each other with respect. And that means the left and the right, everybody.
Absolutely. You know something, social media reminds us often that we have family issues. Everybody has a family problem. But now, since the beginning of time, with Cain and Abel, and then another one, my great, I think it's my 5th great-grandfather, was actually a war hero in Civil War. He was. And he fought for the South. There are monuments of him in Alabama, close to the Martland, Asbury.
Uh-huh.
Well-known guy, had 5 wives. I mean, he was just, he was just a wonder, I bet. But then he had a twin brother who fought for the North. So Alabama Auburn's been going on for a long time.
My gosh, Roll Tide and War Eagle.
There you go. Thank you so much for being with us. How can folks get in contact with you? I know you're out there. You're a speaker. You do all kinds of wonderful.
My email is right here, mcm@maibach.us. You can go to Save Our States and contact me as well. But I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and X. And we give speeches all over the country about the Electoral College, about Washington's farewell address, about the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution itself. Happy to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much. And thank you also for everything you do to bring light to this world. We appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. You're the reason we do this. Continue sending emails. If you have any questions for Michael, I'm going to see if I can twist his arm and get him back on next month as well. You can go ahead and send those questions to me. Donna@donnasedge.com. That's Donna@donnasedge.com. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate it.
Because of your overwhelming support, our 1488 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing, including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Queen City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you.